Right, guys. Hopefully, everyone is joined now. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. For today's webinar, I am pleased to welcome Rob from Material Index. Material Index are a construction technology business with a platform for the rapid cataloging and selling of construction materials from buildings undergoing renovation or deconstruction. Offering pre-demolition audits, material passports, and exchanges, the team have contributed to 150 projects, including offices, retail and industrial sites and hotels. I'll now hand over to the expert to take us through the principles and policies of the circular economy and material reuse. Please do feel free to ask questions and use the chat box throughout the presentation. We'll have some time to go through that Q&A at the end. Right, over to you, Rob. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Ella, for that intro. Yeah, so good to be here today, this afternoon. As you mentioned, my name is Rob Smith. I'm one of the co-founders and managing director at Material Index. And in the room with me, I've got two colleagues. I've got Peter and Finley, who have recently just joined the team. So it's a bit of a learning for them as well. Finley's literally just joined today, so I'll be listening in and learning along with you guys. So we've got about an hour, as I understand. I'll spend maybe 30 to 40 minutes talking through the slide deck, a bit about what we do, the circular economy, the policy landscape. If you've got questions, put them in the chat as you're going. We'll come around to them at the end. I'll also do a bit of a platform demo of our software and save time to address some of those questions. So I will kick off. Great, yeah, so Material Index, we're a team of architects, engineers and software developers. We're based here in Clerkenwell. We're a team of 14 now, and we're recruiting a couple more people as well, so we're sort of steadily growing. We exist for the reason to enable reuse at scale, and we do that working collaboratively with building owners, contractors and design teams. And yeah, we exist for that purpose, for making reuse happen. And we do that by providing a suite of circular economy services. So those range from pre-demolition audits, material reclamation audits, material passports, and we offer a material exchange service as well. And we license our software. I'm going to talk about each one of these services and what exactly they mean. But it's all those services that come together to allow us to get reuse rates on projects up to an average of around 19% and often quite higher on some specific projects, which is well above the industry average of around 4% at the moment. And this helps our clients reduce their costs, their carbon and the waste on their projects. And we're relatively new companies. We've been going about 2.5 years, but we've managed to get pretty good traction pretty fast. We work across the supply chain from developers, so developer landlords, architects, designers, fit out contractors, engineers, university institutions and not-for-profits. So the circular economy does affect all of these businesses, and we work with them all where we can. So Material Index are divided into sort of 3 main arms of the business. The first one is an auditing team. They're made up mainly of architects, and that is all around capturing materials in a building. So we started off by offering pre-demolition audits, which is something you might have heard about before. This is something that is typically done by demolition contractors as a way of estimating how much steel, bricks, concrete, textiles is in a building, as a way of essentially calculating how many skips they need to get rid of that material. But planning changes within the GLA now require that pre-demolition audits are done as part of a circular economy statement. I'll talk more about that in some subsequent slides. So it's now actually a tool that is getting used to facilitate a conversation around reuse. So understanding what is in a building before that building undergoes a change is an enabler for a conversation on reuse. So we started offering pre-demolition audits. We do pre-redevelopment audits, which is more further upstream in the process. So that's a bit of optioneering about different schemes in the building. And we do material reclamation audits, which is like a pre-demolition audit, but we're only cataloging materials that are coming out of the building for brokering, not necessarily the entire structure and concrete and everything. So we do all this using a digital platform. something that we've developed in-house. And what we do that's different to other companies is we catalog on a component level. So we'll go into a building and we will capture every door, window, floor covering, steel, bricks, MEP. Every item in a building is cataloged and then it's tagged with useful data such as size, weight, carbon, condition, ease of disassembly, photographs. So all that goes in there, and what you end up is with a very detailed catalog of what's in a building, and that's what facilitates the reuse conversation. We started doing this manually, and then we quickly realized we had to do it digitally. So yeah, as I said, we built a digital tool to do this, and that allows us to take action on that information, which I'll talk about in the next slide. We also offer this platform on a license basis. So if other people want to go and survey their buildings themselves, if they've got the resource to do that, they can take our platform on a license and do their own material indexing, essentially. So that's one arm of our business. Like I say, that's architects. We go to buildings. We spend a lot of time cataloging the materials that are in buildings. The reason we go to so much effort to catalog a building in detail is, as I said, that then facilitates a conversation around reuse. So I'll give a bit of a platform demo at the end on how that works. But once you've got this sort of asset register, as we call it, you can invite in the professional team, whether it's architects, the designers, the engineers, the sustainability consultants. They can log into the platform and you can start making decisions on the pathways of those materials in line with the waste hierarchy. Then what we do is once that building moves from the auditing phase, which is typically done early in the project, or ideally it's done early in the project, once that building is then coming up for disassembly or deconstruction, we have an internal handover within our ops and brokering team to basically facilitate the sale of those materials out of a building. So we have a team of brokers, our ops specialists, and they work with a distributed network of businesses. So we have over 300 businesses on our books that deal with secondary materials, and they range from everything from white van drivers who might just deal in one product like zip taps, and they take them and put a new valve on them, sell them on eBay, all the way up to manufacturers like SAS International who deal with ceiling tiles. And we've got brickyards on there. We've got MEP specialists, lighting specialists. So we spend a lot of time identifying who all the businesses are in the supply chain that deal with secondary materials. And so once that building comes up from deconstruction, our op will have an internal handover. Our ops team will get involved. We'll have a kickoff meeting with the strip out contractor, the demolition contractor, whoever's been appointed. And we will be very much boots on the ground, working with them, alongside them, to ensure that materials get picked up and removed from site. The agreement we have is that the strip out contractor should be preparing those materials at ground floor for collection, and then our resellers, which are businesses, come and collect those. They have their own storage, they have their own logistics, and they have their own sales channel. So that kind of gets around the problem that's often flagged in reuse around storage. So a lot of these companies already have their own storage. We provide all the paperwork, so any materials leaving site via one of our partners gets a goods transfer note. That's documentation to confirm that that is a good, it's not a waste project. So it's required for environmental compliance, but it also provides an audit trail of what's happening to those materials. And we will get involved with logistics, with storage. We'll arrange third-party storage if it is required, but typically we have resellers that have their own storage. So that's the sort of second arm of the business. The third arm is our tech arm, which builds the software that supports these two functions. The other service I've kind of mentioned we offer is material passport. So this gets talked about a lot in the construction industry. I think architects love the idea of having a kind of digital representation of every component in a building that they can then feed into their BIM model for design. So it wasn't really an area of focus for us initially as a company. We were very much interested in what are the materials coming available like immediately, like what are coming out in the next few weeks and months. And that's why we focused on the pre-demolition audits and the material reclamation audits. But there is a lot of value also in cataloging what's going into a building out at the fit out stage. And so more and more we're getting asked to do this. We're doing some quite big jobs for British Land where we are essentially using the same software we've developed for pre-demolition audits, but we're applying it rather than at the demolition phase, at the fit out phase. So we're going in at first fix and final fix. We're cataloging the materials that are going in, validating that what is going in is what was on the design. And then we're working with the supply chain to tag all the useful information that's available at the early stages of the project. So specification data, O&M data, we're tagging all that to the assets. So you've got a really robust data set for that building, for all the products in it. We hand that over to the client and that's available in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whenever the next phase of that building comes around. It's obviously a lot more kind of desktop work. It's a bit more involved, but it's worth it if the client wants to pay. And so those are the circular economy services that we offer. So that's around kind of material auditing, so cataloging what's in a building, material brokering, so taking that catalog and push selling the materials out to a network of resellers, and that's supported by our tech. Those all come together for our portfolio solution, which is something that we offer to large landlords and developers. So Derwent London are currently a client of ours on this. British Land and Canary Wharf Group are interested in a similar offering. And this is where they take a license to our platform on an annual basis, essentially on a retainer. And we get access to their pipeline of projects. So every time a project comes up with Derwent, we send our auditors there. They don't have the resource to do their own cataloging. So that we send one of our auditors there. They get a discounted rate on that audit. We catalog what's in their building. All those materials appear on the Material Index platform, and anyone in their organization can log in and see what materials are coming available in their own buildings. And they might want to reserve those for another project that is at the fit out stage, or they might want to put something to storage. A lot of these developers have their own storage units, and actually we often go and audit those storage units because they've maybe been filled up over the years by lots of furniture that's high value, but they don't know what's in there and it's not really in circulation. So we might go and audit their storage facility as an asset, start brokering the materials in there into the marketplace, free that asset up for them so that when they are having a strip out, they can utilize that storage facility. So it's starting to really encourage the movement of materials within a client's portfolio, which we observed was clients were already starting to do, but they were sort of managing it internally with spreadsheets or internal chat channels on Microsoft Teams, something like that. So we're giving them the kind of digital layer to enable them to do that at large scale. And any materials that then they don't want to utilize within their own portfolio, we push to our exchange and we broker for them. And also what we're now doing is starting to supply materials into these portfolios. So British Land are about to release their sustainable fit out guidance, which is going to stipulate that a certain percentage of fit out materials come from secondary sources. We'll be able to start providing those materials into their portfolio as well. And yeah, this is the other aspect that we're starting to grow substantially now. So having really focused on auditing buildings and cataloging all the materials that are in them, and then using that audit to push sell materials into a secondary marketplace, what's now happening is a lot of clients are coming to us for the supply of secondary materials. They're coming to us with their bill of materials and asking what can we supply from secondary sources. So in that instance, we have a member of our team who will work with our clients to identify where those materials might come from. It might be coming out of a building we've audited, or it might be coming from one of our resellers. So we're now able to start supplying secondary materials into the design and build contractors, to designers and architects. So that's a bit about the services that we offer, and I'm just going to talk a bit about the circular economy. I'm not sure what level of knowledge there are in this group, so excuse me if I'm covering stuff you already know, but I'll go through it fairly quickly. So I guess the question is, why are we doing all this? Why do we exist as a company? Why are we going to all this effort? Now, if you work in construction, you probably have a fair idea of the amount of waste that exists, but you might not be aware that it's actually 60% of all UK landfill comes from the construction industry, and that's similar in most developed countries. So it's actually huge. And the amount of building components that are currently reused is very low. It's between 2 and 4%. And the emissions, the embodied carbon, so that's the emissions that are given off when a product is produced, that amounts to between 12 and 14% of global carbon emissions for materials going into the construction sector. So it really has a substantial impact on the climate. And what we found is since COVID, where businesses typically took lease cycles, a business would typically take an office lease for, and BCO will know this better than me, 15 to 20 years would kind of be traditional. Now businesses are moving to much shorter tenancies on buildings. Like we're actually like in a service office here, as a lot of companies are, but it can be anywhere between 2 to 4 years now before a lease changes hands, and often lower. So we quite often go into buildings where the materials have barely been in there, a couple of years, and they're getting stripped out for the new tenants. They're often in very good condition. So this trend and the move to service offices is really even exasperating the problem. And if you've been around London at night, you've probably seen that's when a lot of strip out happens at night. You can see these sort of skips filled with waste. So it really is like the scale of the problem is really large, and the opportunity to make a difference is substantial. So what is a circular economy? There's a lot of theory around it. If you go back hundreds of years, it was kind of just how things were done. When I go back to countryside where I grew up, the farmers there, and I talk about what I'm doing, if the farmers say, well, yeah, we do that anyway. We use what's around, and we make use of the resources we have. That's just kind of how they operate. But as we industrialize as a nation, we move to a more linear economy. The benefits of scale. It was all about doing things cheaply, producing, using, and then disposing. And then that obviously has environmental benefits. So there has been this rise recently in the circular economy and utilizing the resources that we have. There is a UK standard on it, and there's quite a lot of work with the butterfly diagram, which talks about keeping a product, whatever it is, whether it's a building product or your phone, in use for as long as possible. Then ideally, you try and repair that. If you can't repair it, you refurbish it, you reuse it, ultimately you have to recycle it. So the recycling is something that's quite established now in the industry. And what's really happening is we're trying to move up that waste hierarchy towards more of retaining and reusing materials. And yeah, so a lot of legislation and guidance is coming around this. So I would say, a lot happening on the continent, but London and the UK are doing a lot of good stuff as well. So the Greater London Authority, as I mentioned earlier, now requires that for certain planning applications, those that are referable to the mayor require a circular economy statement that needs a pre-demolition audit attached to it. There's also very specific guidelines within each borough. So the City and Westminster are probably the two boroughs that are most further ahead in that respect. And if any of you have done any work in those two boroughs, you will understand it. I'll talk a bit more about those. On a national level, yeah, you've got the Circular Economy Task Force, which is part of the government. You've got something similar in Scotland. They're doing their thing. You've got CBAM internationally, which is a carbon border tax. And then what we're seeing now is the real big players, the big developers are developing their own circular economy strategies, and they're all in a bit of competition around that. So British Land, who we work with a lot, have got their full circle, full potential document that they've released. Landsec have their material brief. GPE brought out a circularity metric. So they're all trying to figure out how they're going to fit circular economy into their businesses. And I think from speaking to them, they see it not just as the right thing to do, but actually there's a demand for it. So there is a tenant demand for buildings that are lower carbon. And a lot of work has been done on operational carbon over the years to improve that through energy efficiency. And now the embodied carbon side of things is really picking up and is gathering a lot more focus. So a bit more, yeah, the City of Westminster have released their retrofit first policy. So this is kind of hot off the press. And this is essentially a new look, a new lens at how we how a new development is viewed in terms of demolition, and it's now no longer acceptable to assume that you're going to demolish a building, and actually you have to justify quite strongly and go through a set of criteria to justify why you might demolish a building, and there's a decision gate that you have to pass through to do with, is it structure, is it considered substantial demolition? Yes. Is it structurally sound? Yes or no? What are the changes of use? There's a whole life carbon assessment you might have to do on it, and assess the public benefit. So it's getting fairly onerous. We've been in a few meetings with professional teams recently, providing input on the pre-redevelopment audits and the pre-demolition audits that feed into this piece of work. And from events we're sort of going to, you can really see the leaders of the other boroughs, especially in London and also around the UK and Liverpool and Leeds, places like that, are really looking to London to see what is happening there and what are the changes that are coming and how they can start adopting these policies. So we see it as a sort of, this is the direction of travel. I think a lot of the big developers see this as the direction of travel, and it's going to become more and more required as time goes on. So I'm just going to talk a bit about reuse of materials on a sort of high level. So this is a slide that we always share that talks about the opportunity or the scale of the opportunity when it comes to reuse. So the UK uses about 2.6 billion bricks every year. And we demolish about 2.3 billion bricks, with only about 100 million being used. So even if we just slightly increased the reuse rates on that one product category, there's a huge opportunity in this space for reuse. Currently, we import a lot of bricks. There is a trade deficit on materials we import, around 13 billion, I believe. Whereas what we believe is there's a lot of very valuable materials already in here. And you've heard about mining the Anthropocene or viewing the city as a material bank. This is kind of an example from one product where there are bricks that are demolished every day that could go for reuse. Now it gets slightly nuanced. It depends on the age of the construction and the mortar type, and that will affect the yield that you can get. But the point being, and of course some of the costs associated with doing it in inner city London, but the opportunity is there. With bricks, there's technology coming in from the continent to do it more efficiently and effectively and cheaply. And a lot of these technologies are evolving. So that's one product category across many. And yeah, I guess what we're seeing in terms of the demand is like reuse is starting to happen at scale. So it's being driven by regulation, as I've talked about. What we're seeing is innovation moving into this space. So the picture in this slide is from a company called Lendegger Architecture Practice in Copenhagen. This is Resource Row, which you may have heard of before, where they achieve 80% reuse on a whole site development. And the photos is from when they actually took a wall and cut sections out of it and ended up using it as facade material. So it shows you what, really the upper limits of what really can be achieved with a sort of concerted effort. And we always sort of quote that as a benchmark. But yeah, the early adopters, they're starting to reuse their own stocks. A lot of the big developers we speak to are already moving materials. There's examples of steel being moved from one building and reused in another. But what we believe or what we've seen is the issue that always remains is this having a deep inventory of quality supply of secondary materials. That's what you really need able to facilitate reuse at scale. So you might be able to go on eBay and see some secondary materials for sale, a few pallets of bricks and so on, and maybe some doors, architectural salvage. But really, for reuse to be happening at scale in somewhere like London on big developments, specifiers, D&B contractors, architects, they need assurance that there is going to be a really deep, good quality supply choice of materials to choose from. And that's essentially what Material Index is trying to do. We are trying to provide access to that inventory of materials. We know it exists. We know it's in all the buildings around us. If we can divert those materials from waste and funnel them back into the supply chain. We believe strongly that there's a huge latent demand in the industry to use those materials, and that is what we're starting to see happen. Obviously, one of the questions, the two main questions, and I haven't looked in the chat, but I imagine they might already be there already, is around storage and certification. So yeah, certification is certainly a big issue when it comes to specifying secondary materials back into, large developments. We initially got around this by selling to resellers. So our model, as I explained, is audit, sell to resellers, let them sell on into their supply chain, whoever that might be, social housing, private landlords, and they will provide whatever certification those clients need. But when you're selling back into a London market, it does become more of a requirement, and this is something that we're starting to tackle. So there isn't a kind of universal grading system yet, but these things are coming into play. So it's more on a product by product basis. So picture on the slide is from Cleveland Steel. They're a steel fabricator. They do a lot with secondary steel, initially taking tubulars from the oil industry and repurposing them. They provided a lot to the Olympic Stadium, and they will take steel, they will repurpose it, and they will recertify it as if it is new. And they are getting used more and more. And then similarly with other product categories, there are players moving into the space who will take them and they will recertify them. So whether it's lighting, they might take lighting back, upgrade it to an LED, do some testing on it, on the number of hours it's been running, and then recertify it. And this is something that we kind of step in and help out with. So we can, where required, we can step in and help with these services, kind of joining the dots. So where we can identify the supply materials and there's a demand for those materials, we'll do the bits in between. So finding the recertifier, finding the storage if it's required, arranging the logistics. So that's a run through of our services. I'm just doing a time check. So we're just almost up to sort of half an hour. So I'll run through a couple of case studies and then we will go through the platform and then we'll have some time for questions. So just before we get into the case studies, a little overview then of basically what I talked about is how Material Index works. This is the service from site survey using our digital tool. With that catalogue of information, we then have a collaborative workshop with the professional team to decide from all those materials, that asset register that we've created, what pathway, where are the materials going? Are they getting retained in situ? Are you keeping the structure where it is? Are you reusing the modular flooring on site? Are you lifting that modular flooring up, laying some utilities and putting it back down in the same location? Or are those materials being made available to Material Index to broker? Or is it just something that's going to go down the waste and recycling stream? Once those pathways are set, it gives that project some analytics, we give some compliance reporting, and then it's the selling for our exchange, as I've talked about, and our interaction with the deconstruction team, working with businesses to buy the materials. And so some examples where we've applied this. This was a really interesting project. This was with the London Legacy Development Corporation, who was put together for the development of the Olympic Stadium and everything surrounding that. So we work with them and Plexel, who are a co-working chain based out there. They'd acquired a pumping station, an old Thames Water pumping station where Thames Water essentially just dropped the keys and walked out. This was getting converted into a storage and site office. So we went in with our team of auditors, we catalogued all the materials in there into our platform, and then we worked with our network of businesses that deal with this sort of stuff. We're not an expert in all these materials. We rely on our resellers to provide that expertise, but they rely on our audit and our detailed asset register to kind of make those decisions, to decide if they want to come and purchase items. So we work with them and we were able to broker. Usually there's some pictures of the actual brokering, but this is the location. We were able to broker around £12,000 worth of MEP equipment. So basically centrifugal pumps, inline pumps, hydraulic systems, piping, all kinds of things came out of this building. And so the client was super happy because that was £12,000 back when it actually would have been traditionally a cost for them to get rid of that. That was money that they got back that offset some of their further development costs in that project. So, okay, so there are some pictures on this. So these are some of the images of us actually getting involved with the strip out. So those are all the valves you can see palletized there. So we did the audit, and then yeah, you can see we get heavily involved organizing curtain siders to get all those materials basically off-site. And then this is office retrofit. So this is a bit more typical of what we do. I'd say like kind of 80% of what we do is London offices. We audit all kinds of buildings. We do, yeah, pumping stations, car parks, shopping centres, gymnasiums, whatever it is. But most of it is London offices. And that's because that's where there's a lot of them. That's where a lot of the work is taking place. And they're the ones that are mainly affected by the legislation. So this is an example of a material reclamation audit. So it's not a pre-demolition audit, which is required for planning and has all the compliance and where we catalog the whole building and the foundations and the structure. This is the same process, but it's a bit more slimmed down. It's a bit quicker. And we're just looking at, it's for a client who they've already got planning and they just want to know what can they divert from landfill and where can they potentially get value back from their materials. So we go in, same process, but we just focus on the materials we think have reuse value. We catalog everything in there, and then we assign it a likelihood of reuse. So with that asset register, we will then tag each asset with a likelihood of sale. And that is based on our brokering experience. And we now have fairly good idea when we go into an office based on kind of the spec, the condition, the age, the individual components, what the likelihood of for each of those are that they're going to get either a sale or a donation, or they're going to go to down the waste and recycling streams. So like in the image there, there's raised modular flooring. 5 years ago, that was getting binned as a waste product. And now that's fairly commoditized as a reused product. And we get between like £2 and £4 a panel for raised modular flooring. Similarly, things like carpet tiles now, those go pretty well. White goods, steel. So certain items that we designate as green, and they have a high likelihood of reuse. We've got established partners. We've done price discovery. We know what the residual value is. So we provide that information back to the client. And then we've got all the amber items. So those are all the items where we have cataloged those. We have sold or brokered those materials before, but it's always a bit more tricky. There's not a guaranteed pathway for them. So it becomes with a bit more risk. And then it's down more to the client of the appetite, like what are their sustainability targets on this project? Do they want to take the risk of going after some of those amber items? And then you've got the long tail of red items where, yeah, reuse is either not feasible or is feasible, but is extremely challenging. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of stuff lies at the moment. That's just the nature of it. But what we're seeing with time is more things are moving up into that green band. For example, we sold floor boxes the other day for the first time. So the floor boxes in raised modular flooring used to be a waste product. Now we've got a partner who sells them. So we're seeing this industry evolve very fast, and players are coming up, dealing with specific things like ironmongery. We've got manufacturers who are starting to implement take back schemes. So all that is changing rapidly. And what we are doing is keeping a sort of live data set. And so when we do the audit, we can tell you quite quickly, is that red, amber, green? What's the likelihood? And so this was something that we applied on 2 Pancras Square. So this was with Related Argent in King's Cross. So it was end of a lease. I think it was 2 floors in this building that were going to get renovated. We were brought in super late in this instance. So material reclamation audits were often brought in quite last minute. But we can react fairly quickly. I think even the strip out might have started by the time we went in. But we sent our auditors there. They basically wanted to reduce their waste and they wanted some social value out of this. We went in, catalogued the materials we thought had reuse value from the fit out. So it's things like lighting, acoustic baffles, carpet tiles, kitchenettes, T-points. There were some pods, I think. The ceiling tiles on this one as well. So we went in, we catalogued it, and then we actually tagged it. What we found really useful on site is actually going in and making it very clear to the site guys who maybe don't know a lot about what we do, putting big labels on the materials that are assigned for reuse, so they're clearly tagged. So this was a great a great project. There was, yeah, 77, a lot of materials, 77 tons were identified in the audit, and 44% were diverted for reuse in this instance. I think in this one, most of it went to charity projects. Sorry, charity partners, I would say, and that's just because we were limited on time. So we were able to donate those, but the client was extremely happy with that. Here's some more pictures of some of the things that went, how we packaged them up. And I think the picture at the bottom left is actually those lights sitting in display at our charity partner who will then sell them on. Yeah, and this is a typical exchange. So these are the sorts of things we might deal with from a fit out side. So this is a range of pictures from different projects we've worked on. Carpet tiles of a certain condition, yeah, those go very easily. Got raised modular flooring, I've kind of talked about. Hand dryers, we get a good price for hand dryers. We've got a partner that will take those, recertify them and sell them on with a warranty. Yeah, floor boxes at the bottom there I mentioned. Bricks is a kind of traditional architectural salvage material. We have a lot of brick yards on our books, but we will sell bricks on behalf of developers, and we can also procure them for people who want secondary bricks. And obviously sanitary items, there is just always loads of sanitary items. It's a bit more challenging, but that's an area we're seeing a lot of growth in, and it forms part of the British Land fit out guidance to start sourcing, I think, 25% of sanitary items from secondary sources. Here's some recent highlights that I'm just going to briefly go over on the brokering side. So there's pictures from a few projects here. So the top right one is from the GSK building. So that's 980 Great West Road with Hadley Property Group. So that was a big project. I think it's the biggest project at the time that we've been on. So we were involved in cataloguing that building. And then we worked alongside the strip out contractor, almost side by side, to enable reuse. And we provide an additional service, which I've got a slide on, around monitoring, actually monitoring all the materials going off site. So not just the reuse materials, but also the recycling streams as well. Desks, we've been approached by a lot of fit out contractors who want furniture for their site setup, essentially. So this is furniture when they're on a job, to do, a long couple of year job. They need a site office for their team, and they want cheap furniture for that, but it also needs to be good quality. We have audited buildings, found D&B contractors who want to buy that, and then we've arranged the logistics and storage in between to store it maybe for a couple of months until they need it on their project. So that's happening more and more. There's a brewery that we brokered recently, so a lot of pubs are shutting down, unfortunately, but a lot of the equipment, the brewing equipment, might be interesting. And there's commercial kitchens, they go really well. So I could talk forever about these various projects we've got going on. I'm just going to talk about material passports. So material passports, as I've talked about, is a similar service. It's cataloging. It's still cataloging materials, but it's cataloging what's going into a building rather than what's coming out. And this was an example of a project we did for QBRE, where we did a material reclamation audit of the materials coming out, and we brokered those. And then we did a material passport of the materials going into the building. So now they've got that data for the next phase of the project. And that provides a lot more granular, I'll show you on the platform, it's a lot more granular information on each asset because you've got all that information available. Yeah, there's loads of documentation on material passports. We've kind of delved into all of it and formed our own view. There's quite a few case studies in here. What I'm going to do though is the next 5 minutes, I'm just going to give a quick platform demo and then leave time for questions.
Someone has asked, do you sell broker structural broker structural materials beyond brickwork, or is it mainly architectural features?
Yeah, so we steel, I think I mentioned steel. We've brokered steel from a number of sites. We've also procured steel for clients and resellers. Yeah, bricks is fairly standard. Facade material, we're starting to do more. So, and it's not providing a structural integrity, but it's, weather facing, stone coming off a building, we're brokering that. Glass, not so much, that tends to get recycled. But we're trying to do more and more of this stuff. Block work, not so much. That typically gets crushed and recycled.
Someone else has asked, so how does the site survey through the app work? I suppose what you've just showed us, is that available to anyone that kind of purchases the license? And I see that in your photos, you've got your auditors going around with an iPad kind of thing. Is that something available to anybody, or is that an in-house piece?
Yeah, well, it's I mean, it's a service you pay for, so you can either appoint us to come and do it on a project by project basis, and we price it off a square meterage rate. So a full pre-demolition audit is a bit more pricey because it's cataloging everything in the building. It comes with a report that's compliant for planning. The material reclamation audit is a bit cheaper, but it's all rates based off a square meterage rate. Or if you're a client, we have fit out contractors, we have some architects that have a license, so they'll pay an annual subscription, and then they can basically do it self-serve essentially.
Cool. I also another question. So, what impact does increasing reuse actually have on the program? I know, you spoke about the brickwork. We're only using a small element, but
Yeah.
taking the care, how much, are you seeing that adding a lot of time to program and
Yeah.
demolition?
No, I mean, so the one thing we're trying to do is not impact the program as much as possible. So this is like the whole point of like getting as early as possible to do the audit. Like the earlier we can get in, the better, because it gives us more time to find the buyers. And ideally, where we want to be is like most of those items are in the green band, like they're basically pre-sold. And then that is built into the tender for the strip out contractor that certain items are already pre-sold and they need to be disassembled for pickup. Now, I guess then the question is, yeah, what's the incremental time and cost to disassembling something versus like the traditional method of getting it out? And that just varies product to product. So, certain things like furniture, it's not really any additional labor, maybe a little bit to handle it more carefully to get out the building than just to dispose of it. Carpet tiles, it's really no difference. But then things like a glass partition, suddenly, yeah, you might need a specialist to do that, and the time goes up a lot. So we are doing a lot of work to understand that. We work very closely with demo contractors. We started running some time trials to say, okay, take that ceiling down, take part of that ceiling down how you traditionally would, and then take part of it down and prepare it under our guidance for reuse. What's the incremental time? And there is a difference for certain products, more so than others. And we're just trying to understand what that is and feed that back to the client so they can make a decision. What we hope is that with time, there'll be enough residual value in these secondary materials to pay for that additional time.
Cool. So yeah, a few more. Someone's asked, we're seeing a burst of new material marketplaces emerging, which is great. What seems to be missing though is a true one-stop shop. Are you
Yeah.
collaborating with other marketplace or open to doing so through APIs?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a fair question. We get this a lot. I guess it's so early in this, we're kind of in an industry at the foothills of this in terms of reuse and marketplaces. And yeah, there are a number that are available. There's a few on the continent. We know who they are. We're on good terms with the people that run them. We're open to collaborating with anyone, and we will list materials that we've audited on other exchanges if we think it will get them moving and get them sold. I guess the issue is we haven't yet seen one where that works better than our model, if I'm honest. I think our model, everyone's approaching it in a slightly different way. And they've got their own views on how that should work. And we've got our strategy, which I've kind of talked about. And if we see someone that's doing something different and is working, we're happy to collaborate, I guess is a short answer. And in future, maybe there will be, APIs that link them. I would say it's a bit early at the moment for us to like API into another, like one of these marketplaces. I think some of the more established ones are like quite niche, and things like there are like furniture specific ones are a bit more established. Those are probably what we would focus on, is like how can we partner with ones doing specific product categories.
Another question, they're coming in now. So for items that could be recycled, do you also provide direction on businesses that provide that service?
Yeah, it's a good question as well. More and more, yes, actually. Like it was when we moved into this space, we were like, no, like recycling is kind of quite an established market. It's handled by the demolition contractors. We won't get involved. But we get approached by a lot of recycling companies that are keeping materials like higher up within the recycling pathway, so like a higher value recycled product, like steel, for example. So we are starting to have those conversations, and we're getting asked by clients about it too. Can we provide more granular information on those products that are going to go for recycling? So yeah, we are starting to talk to companies that specialize in that. Yeah.
We have, in your experience, what's the reuse potential for sanitary ware, and what furniture in general that usually gets reused a lot compared to other products?
Yeah, so sanitary wares, this is one of the things like drives me a bit mad, because it's like it should be getting reused all the time, because it's like quite carbon intensive. It can be cleaned up easily. Like there's loads of it, so it should be, but it is tricky. Like we have pathways that send it abroad, so we do send some stuff abroad for reuse, and we do due diligence on where that goes. But it's not something we've had loads of reuse with, but we are seeing that change now. We are starting to get people specifying secondary. As I mentioned, the British Land Fit Out Guidance is specifying that. So we're expecting that to change quite rapidly on the sanitary items. I think the rest of the question was about other items, was it, that go for reuse?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, the things that like are really liquid is like, yeah, good quality furniture, the carpet tiles and raised modular flooring, pendant lighting, steel the bricks, white goods, and then lots of type of lighting is difficult. We think lighting is a big opportunity area, but there's so much lighting, but not only a small percentage of it currently goes, but we think that will change. AV is pretty good. Partitions is an area, is something that I think, you know, there's a lot of very carbon intensive, but very difficult. There aren't resellers for partitions, so you have to go site to site. We have done it, but that's very challenging. Yeah,
Someone else has just asked as well about cement. Is that?
yeah, we've not looked into cement at all. Yeah, you know, those are the big ticket items. If you can get cement or concrete, either like low carbon or reused, obviously that's going to be a game changer for the industry. There's lots of companies working on those things. If they want to get in contact, I can direct them to them. But we haven't. We're just about reuse. And as far as we go in that respect, is we know we're close with architects, like 3XN, you might have heard of, who have done some testing around reusing like concrete slabs, and they've actually taken some out of some buildings, bench test it, and put it back. So that's kind of where we get involved essentially.
I have a question. So I'm an MEP engineer, so this is kind of
Right.
a weighted, not weighted, but I see that you've got MEP items in your audits, and I suppose in terms of a passport sense, do you see yourself in? I don't know if you do this now or it's something you guys are looking into. Kind of comes into somebody else's questions about operating in future markets, but having the potential to log things like maintenance on those material passports, so that, you know, when you do come to resell that piece of equipment, you can say, you know, here's proof that it's been well maintained, here's the log.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's what would be ideal, is ideally you're doing a material passport at the start. You're you know, logging what's going in, and then I mean we do it as part of BREEAM in use. So part of BREEAM in use is essentially like maintaining that log throughout the life of the building. Those checks and everything are getting done anyway, right? Because they have to do it for compliance. So if that data is available, there's no reason, once our client has like a live material passport, that information is tagged in there. So
Yeah, and so I suppose your software has that option to kind of keep that tracked.
yeah, we can tag it anything we want to it essentially. Yeah.
Cool. And yeah, I don't know if you have any other comments for the kind of operating plans for operating in the future markets, which is another question out there.
Yeah, interesting one. Maybe one day. There is a company, Circa Trade, I think, whose model is around that specifically, like the futures market. It's interesting, and we'd love to, but I think for us, it's kind of, there's a lot to get after in the immediate term, and just getting these materials that are coming out rehomed. But yeah, we expect that in the future, where we want to get to is like we're auditing a building and we're giving live price data on those materials, because we've developed a marketplace, or someone has developed a marketplace that is of a scale and established enough that we can provide live price data on that material when we audit, and I guess that then starts to feed into a futures market. Is my kind of rudimentary understanding of future markets.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think
Some
those
good
are all my
questions
questions.
there, yeah.
If anyone does have any, just quickly put them down now. But otherwise, thank you so much, Rob. It's been a really interesting hour. And for those that are interested, I think we're going to release a recording of most of this presentation anyway, so that will become available on the BCO YouTube for anyone that's missed it. And again, if anyone has any questions for Rob, I'm sure you'll welcome them after the webinar. So thank you again, and thank you guys for listening in, and hope you all found it really interesting.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, good questions at the end. Yeah, if anyone wants to get in touch, drop me an email. I guess you should have it in the invite somewhere. But yeah, thanks for having me. Pleasure.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody.